Hello and welcome. It is another rousing edition of the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. I'm Matt Michaels. Hello to you and happy Thanksgiving, Brad Tradago.
Hello and happy Thanksgiving. We're about to go our separate ways on separate journeys over Thanksgiving, which is kind of part of the gig, and it's a fun part of the gig. It's a little different, unconventional Thanksgivings for both of us, but looking forward to it.
Well, I at least get to stay in the state of Missouri for my Thanksgiving. Who knows what part of the country you will be flying over as you head to sunny Florida for some women's basketball games that we will talk about in short order. Mike Kelly on Tuesday night's basketball game promised you that we have hot takes, must-dos, food recipes, and books you should read.
Oh, geez.
I don't know if I have any of those prepared for today.
I could probably round up a few of those, but that's a good point. I'm not a chef. I'm just a consumer. I do enjoy a wide variety of things, but I can't really give you advice on how to make stuff. I will say, if we're going to combine like a hot takes and a food thing, I've always felt that the most underrated Thanksgiving side is green bean casserole.
Yes, I agree with that. I don't even think that's a very hot take.
It's a little unconventional, but it's like I feel like I only get green bean casserole at Thanksgiving, and I find it delightful.
I think some people don't like it because you probably do get 3 times your daily recommended value of sodium from an serving. But with that said, I agree wholeheartedly.
Well, as you know, the daily recommended percentages on sodium and such do not apply on the fourth Thursday of November.
Well, when it comes to false advertising, we have what Mike said, and then we have that. If you are on a sodium-restricted diet, please do not listen to Brad Tradago. He's not a doctor despite what we say. We will thank you for listening, as always, and thank our friends at Shelter Insurance for powering the podcast. Ranked number 1 in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central region by J.D. Power. 7 of the last 8 years. We're your shield. We're your shelter. Already veering away from the hot takes by saying that you need to watch your health at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, good for you. I just finished Giannis, a biography on Giannis Antetokounmpo, which was actually very good. He has a pretty remarkable story. Miran Fader wrote that. It was pretty well done. And there is a Mizzou connection. One of his first, it might have been his first NBA head coach was Larry Drew, who of course played at Mizzou, and he spoke very highly of Larry Drew and how he was just a good influence on him early on in his pro career.
And when you're in Fort Myers, what you must do is go to Miller's Ale House, because I was there once.
Okay.
In Fort Myers on
Noted.
a trip.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
There, we hit everything. We've made Mike Kelly correct. There is so much to get to. Why don't we start with what we most recently saw in hoops on the men's and women's sides? On the men's side, pretty convincing victory over South Carolina State, 98-66. It helps when you start the game in the first 8.5 minutes going on a 27-5 run. At one point, 19-1 to begin the game. And you'd go even before that to South Dakota, 102-68. It continues a trend in some of these bye games, if you should call them that, at home, where Missouri establishes its lead, maybe wavers a little bit or plays just a restrictor plate race in the second half, but is never seriously in doubt, where multiples score in double figures. In the case of this game against South Carolina State, all 11 who took the floor scored at least 1 point. And I think that we see the foundations of what Missouri will try to take into these tougher matchups against Notre Dame and Kansas coming up in a couple of weeks, which is they want to get up and down in transition, they want to leverage their size, and they want to improve on the rebounding side, which I think has been something we've seen through the last few games at home.
A few of the numbers that popped out to me from this game. First of all, one thing that's popped out throughout the season, Mizzou shoots 52% from the field in this game. They've shot 50% from the field or better in every game this season. Now, I would predict that is not going to continue throughout the entire year, but still, even when you're going up against, kind of the bye games like you mentioned, and you got a Minnesota team thrown in there that is a Big Ten school, but they have a new head coach. They're kind of in transition as a program. So 7 teams that you're expected to beat, especially where these games are played, but still to be that efficient offensively and to see the ball go in the basket, at a more consistent rate like that, I think that's really encouraging. Sean Phillips continues his great start as a Tiger. 17 points and 8 rebounds, and he was 7 of 8 shooting the ball, so that's really efficient. T.O. Barrett had a career high in terms of scoring with 11. Mark Mitchell was productive as usual, scoring and rebounding, but he also had 6 assists, and that could be really cool. If you have have some high-low action going, working with Phillips and starting to incorporate that a little more, that could be a really interesting dynamic that Mizzou could bring in one of their lineups. And to see Trent Burns on the floor, finally, making his collegiate debut, the 7'5" Burns, and he played about 11 minutes, 7 points, 3 rebounds, and a block. And if you can get 7 points, 3 rebounds, and a block out of Trent Burns throughout this season, and be a presence defensively and alter some additional shots too, I think you would take that. And now we'll see what happens. You got the Cleveland State game coming up on Friday, but then business starts to pick up, right? Starting early in December. You're at Notre Dame, and then you've got the game against KU coming up that following Sunday in Kansas City. So it's going to be a really, really interesting time coming up in the month of December. Of course, bragging rights on the horizon too. So some more interesting games are coming, but I think there are some trends there that we're seeing that look pretty good.
I thought it was good to get Burns in the game in the first half, if only for a couple of minutes, to give him some sea legs, and then we really started to see the type of player he could be. Had a couple of turnovers, made an ill-advised pass down the lane that I suppose will come with time, even though he had the right idea. Listed at 7'5", again, the tallest men's basketball player Missouri has ever had. And I think just getting all those arms and legs to work in coordination again in the context of a game will take a little bit of time, but you have to enjoy what you see. And I mean, I saw him directing traffic out there. I saw him pointing out to his teammates, not afraid to assert himself as the center of the defense, which is extremely important, because if you have a center that's just going to be there and be passive, you're asking for trouble no matter what. So he was able to call some things out. I saw it on both ends, honestly, and really good to see from the top 100 selection in his class. Now, finally, a couple of years later, getting a chance to play. And Honor Boateng, I think, deserves some extra credit here. Had a double-digit game, got on the rebounding side of things for Missouri, and it wasn't always perfect, but it was assertive. And Missouri, as we've seen, will need more assertive play from more players. Something Dennis Gates prides himself on is his depth. Well, Jaden Stone has a hand injury now and is going to be out 3 to 4 weeks, which will put him at least through these games against Notre Dame and Kansas as out, and very well could be until the new year that we don't see Jaden Stone. So you take away those double-digit games that he has consistently produced in all 6 he's played for Missouri, and you say, where does it come from? Can a guy like Boateng step up and fill that role? Quite possibly. And I think he did in some ways in this game against the Bulldogs, and we'll see how that looks against Cleveland State and going forward.
Well, especially on the wing. Stone, like you mentioned, out a few weeks, it appears, and we still haven't seen Trent Pierce yet. So we don't know when Pierce will be able to work his way back into that wing rotation. So you take both of them out, and that really adds to the urgency of having somebody like a Boateng available and ready to step up. It never hurts to have 7'5" available in the rotation, so you have more options if you want to go big. I mean, obviously you've got Phillips, who has continued to be productive and was productive on Tuesday night, but if Phillips hits foul trouble or something, you've got another big that you can put in there. And yeah, folks like, Mark Mitchell has been the de facto 5 at times and probably will again against smaller lineups. Luke Northweather is 6'10"-ish, and, Porter is in that height range, and, even Cruz is in that range also. But to have just some more depth and some more options for a coach in Dennis Gates, who really likes to throw a lot of different combinations at people, I think that could be really good. And hopefully, as we turn toward SEC play, we'll be able to finally see this, fully operational depth station with guys like Pierce and Burns, and maybe get Stone back and folks like that.
Well, I think the thing that will be a testament to Dennis Gates right now, and granted, he makes it very difficult for you to pick it out, if I was in his position going on the road to South Bend, Indiana, I don't know that I would change my approach very much. I think I'd play 10. Because all of them have seemed to have their specific role. Now, on a given night, if someone gets out there and doesn't seem to have the legs, maybe that person doesn't play a lot of minutes. But I think right now playing everyone is the key. I don't think he has to shorten his bench and go, with 6 or 7 primary and then just a couple of guys out there for token minutes. I think that getting everybody 10, 12 minutes a game at a minimum is a good plan right now for this team. I think it works for this group, and we'll see how that looks as time goes on. But I think it's a testament to how prepared everybody was to start their season that we've seen flashes of goodness from every single person on the roster in these early games, which is what you really want to see. As long as you're not going to play your toughest battles in November, at least have everyone have something you can point to and say, I can see where that works in this.
And circling back to the efficiency piece that I mentioned earlier, you're playing all these guys and people are putting the ball in the basket at a really good rate. You've shot 50% or better every game. So, yeah, like you said, this is not going to be the toughest month of games that Mizzou has this season. In fact, it's going to be the easiest month of games that Mizzou has this season, but you've seen some encouraging signs there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we look forward to $1.99 beers on a Friday afternoon at Mizzou Arena.
If you haven't already gotten enough carbs, from the day before, now's your opportunity.
If you had a little bit too much Thanksgiving cheer the day before, just keep your party going. Why not? No need to shop. Shop for your $1.99 beers at Mizzou Arena on a Friday afternoon. College athletics sometimes is very, very fun, and it's fun just to say that. For Mizzou women's basketball, the most recent results that we can talk about, one against Troy that seemed down, one against Washington State that seemed very up, and that's the most recent result, 71-54. Just a quick jaunt down to Orlando to really beat Washington State soundly. The Tigers had an 8-point lead after one quarter. They never looked back. They added really throughout the course of the game. 20-10 for Shannon Dowell in victory. I look at it and I see games like that, Brad, and I say, this is a Missouri team that's going to find a way to compete once we get to the tougher months. But then you see a home loss and you wonder, okay, well, it's still a process, right? There's still a team that's coming together and learning from Kelly Harper and figuring out what it does best. Could that game against the Cougars maybe be the blueprint for what they might do best against high major competition?
No, that's certainly the hope, right? And certainly had a better performance than what we saw against Troy. But, as Coach Harper said, Washington State was a just completely different matchup than what Troy was. Troy wanted to run and gun and shoot as quickly as possible and shoot a lot of threes. And as it turned out in the game last week at Mizzou Arena, they had two different players that were just unconscious from three. They both had career games from beyond the arc. So when you have two people cooking like that, it makes it really difficult. And then they also had the athleticism to pull down a ton of offensive rebounds. Mizzou struggled with that on the defensive end the whole game. Washington State, much more deliberate pace as a team. Not a great rebounding team either, to be honest, and Mizzou was able to flip the rebounding differential for the most part in their favor in that game. There was a tweak in the starting lineup, too. They shifted Shannon Dowell to the point, and Coach Harper has even said, we know she's not a point guard, but we've looked at the different matchups, we've looked at the different lineup combinations, I should say, and we're most productive whenever we put Shannon Dowell at the one, because that gives us opportunities to get different folks out there, including Chloe Sotel, the Pepperdine transfer who made her first career start, and she played well against Troy, scored in double figures there. Again, makes her first career start in this game, 9.6 rebounds, 5 assists. And I think that's really encouraging from the sophomore to see her out there. And Dowell has just been terrific ever since she came over. She's been, quite frankly, she's been the best player on the team so far this season. And it's the third game where, again, she was the point guard. She had 20 points and 10 rebounds. I mean, she's been a very willing rebounder, very good about, off the dribble, getting to the rim, generating free throw opportunities. She's top 5 in the country right now in free throws made and attempted. She's just a bucket getter, to be honest, and she's shooting well from outside the last handful of games to go along with that ability to get to the rim. So, yeah, you can see the pieces there. It's definitely still a work in progress. I think Mizzou has some opportunities this weekend against a Bradley team out of the Missouri Valley that they quite frankly, they should be better than. And then Saturday, Northwestern is undefeated out of the Big Ten, but they haven't had any, just eye-popping results yet against the competition that they've played. So that's an opportunity to bag your first Power 4 win of the year, and we'll just see how Mizzou looks down in Fort Myers this weekend.
Yeah, and then you finally get off the road for a while, and you start to stay at home, or at least in the state of Missouri, 3 straight at home. Cal, SIU Edwardsville in Illinois. They will play the Billikens in St. Louis on December the 14th. But after all these travels, you get to stay home once you get back for December, all the way until you make a trip to Lexington, Kentucky in January 4th. And in terms of staying in the state, sleeping in your own bed, so that will be a chance, I think, for this team to really gather itself after some early travels crisscrossing the country. And by the way, listen to Brad Trinago, of course, on your Varsity Network app, wherever you may be, and watch on national television from Fort Myers. So Mizzou women's basketball. You just need to find the Ion Network in your locality.
Yeah, a little Ion action on the TV side. And if you don't get it, then you can
just look out for Brad Trinago on national TV. It's like it's as good as if he was in the Thanksgiving Day parade in New York.
I'll be behind a basket in the upper deck. Apparently, I've been told. We'll
behind a basket upper deck.
Yeah. So that'll be good. I've done it before. That back in my my junior college play-by-play days. So that'll be.
You sure they don't have you in the catbird seat instead?
Yeah, I'll need to pack my binoculars maybe for that one. But we'll make it work. I'm sure they're concerned about the thousands and thousands of folks that are going to be there. They couldn't possibly make room for radio down courtside. And it's like, all right, I'll stop talking about it. But it's going to be a good trip. Very grateful and thankful for the chance to do it. I think they'll both be interesting games. And you mentioned Cal and Illinois are both kind of middle of the pack in their respective conferences. So those will be good tests for Mizzou and good measuring sticks for Mizzou to kind of see where they're at against schools their size with SEC play. Starting on New Year's Day actually against mighty Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. So we look forward to all of that. There is much else that has gone on inside and around Mizzou Athletics, including a big rivalry game presented by Shelter Insurance to tell you about, and we will, but first, a word from our friends at Shelter.
This episode of Mizzou Storytellers on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast is brought to you by Shelter Insurance. Ranked number 1 in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central Region by J.D. Power 5 out of the last 6 years. We're your shield. We're your shelter.
Contact Socket today for voice data and internet services for your home and business. 1-800-SOCKET-3 or visit socket.net.
Faster than Josiah Trotter gets into an offensive backfield. Socket fiber internet.
I would hope so. That man was once again very, very active. Unfortunately, the defense's activity could not overcome the fact that the offense did not have much against an Oklahoma defense, especially run defense, that's really good. And the Sooners win 17-6 in Norman. It was kind of a gray, blustery day. The first quarter for Missouri was as good of a start as you could possibly hope for. And it kind of came unglued for there. There was an 87-yard crossing route that turned into a touchdown for Oklahoma. They took advantage of poor field position after Missouri's subsequent drive went backwards with penalties, and from that field position, they scored their second touchdown of the day, and from that point, it would just kind of play keep away, a lot of punts in the second half. Missouri rushed so strong to start the game, but wound up with only 70 yards on the ground. Coach Drinkwitz, after the game, said maybe we weren't creative enough in terms of the offense and what we were calling and what we were trying to do, but hey, Missouri had been able to get 3 or 4 yards reliably by saying, hand it to Ahmad Hardy and let him get you the first down. It just, in this game, that didn't work once Oklahoma figured out a way to stuff it. And from that point, it was really, really swimming uphill for Bo Pribula and company.
It certainly was. And, Coach Drinkwitz has talked, too, about, needing to find the winning play in a game, and we've mentioned that. We've talked about that a lot, it seems like, in the games where Mizzou has come up a little bit short, like in this one. I mean, the Tigers outgained the Sooners in the game, 301 to 276. So, they had some progress in the game relative to Oklahoma's offense. Neither offense was great, but what did OU have? They had that big, that 80-plus yard touchdown pass to Satania, and then they took advantage of a short field, and they were able to find a TD pass as well to get what turned out to be all the points that they would need in the game. They have maybe probably the best kicker in the country, and he was able to cash in on one of his field goals, so that they were able to do enough to win the game, and Mizzou, unfortunately, this year just hasn't been quite at that point. Good to see Bo Pribula back out there, still a work in progress. And, you're going up against maybe the best defense in the nation, so that was a challenging spot to return. Trotter 13 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. He was great again. But, for a Mizzou team that, they're limited offensively, and especially with Blake Craig out for the entire year, basically, they've been limited on special teams. I mean, that missed field goal short early on was a killer, and, OU immediately turns that around to that long touchdown. And then pretty soon after that, you have like a 30-yard punt, and OU is able to take advantage of a short field and cash in for their second touchdown. So both scores came off of shortcomings, I guess you could say, for Mizzou on special teams. So, yeah, still some work to do in 2 of the 3 phases of the game for sure. And now for Mizzou, again, can you reframe your mindset and focus on trying to finish out the regular season and the bowl game on a high note, because you do still have an opportunity here to do something that be a part of something that Mizzou football has never done in its history, which is win at least 9 games 3 years in a row.
Yeah, and that was pointed out to us by Mike Kelly doing research for this game, and it kind of stands out. In Gary Pinkel's era, you never had 3 in a row with 9 or more, and I know in previous eras you didn't have as much of an opportunity because you didn't have as many games, but you've played 10 games or more for a long, long time, and having the chance to do 3 in a row is really something special if this Missouri team can pull it off. And who they'd have to pull it off against is this Arkansas Razorbacks team in the Battle Line rivalry presented by Shelter Insurance, as always. You take a look at the team statistically, and you'd say on paper, Missouri just stands out head and shoulders because of the mismatch with their offense, even with some of the passing struggles with uncertainty and injury at quarterback, against an Arkansas defense that's just poor. There's no way about it. They are a poor defense. What they do have is a pretty good offense, and Talon Green is a really talented quarterback. He may be the most talented quarterback in the Southeastern Conference. They haven't won a league game, but that doesn't mean they haven't been close and haven't pushed people. And for Missouri, you have to look at this past week where they struggled offensively and say, can you flush that and go back to the ways that you looked against Mississippi State and some other teams this season? Because if you don't, Arkansas's offense is good enough that even with your good defense, they can put up 20-something points on you, and you're going to have to do that to win this game on the road.
How is Arkansas 2-9 with a positive point differential on the season? That is great. That's really hard to do.
Right.
What that does mean, though, is that, like you said, they've been in a lot of games. The Notre Dame game was a disaster for them, but they've been really close in a lot of games. I mean, I think back to the Memphis game. They're driving for the game-winning score, and they hand it off, and the running back fumbles, and Memphis is able to turn it around, and you lose that game. Mm-hmm. That's basically that's Arkansas's season in a nutshell.
Well, I can give you the actual statistic because I have it here. They are number 128 in FBS, which, if it's not dead last, is close to dead last in turnover margin. They are more than 1 turnover worse than their opponents per game. That is how you lose games with a positive scoring margin on the season.
Yeah, I believe it's 134 teams that the NCAA looks at, so very close to dead last. They're also very close to dead last in terms of points and yards allowed, but they're top 25 in the country in terms of points gained and yards gained, if you will. You mentioned Talon Green, certainly a really talented guy. Is he going to be the quarterback? We don't even know that. I mean, KJ Jackson, the redshirt freshman, has started to get worked in a little bit more. It's possible you end up seeing him. Either way, it's going to be a talented guy at the head of a talented offense that Mizzou is going to go up against. Of course, Mizzou has a pretty darn good defense that I still contend is a playoff caliber defense. Mm-hmm. Like, there are going to be teams in the college football playoff that don't have defenses as good as Mizzou's. Now, the question is for the Tigers, can you find some consistency offensively still on the road against a rival in the SEC? Can you find consistency offensively? And, in terms of special teams, can you execute whenever you're asked to execute and get yourself to an 8-4 regular season?
Well, if they are a playoff-level defense, a game like this will show it. I mean, don't just look and say that Missouri has had the upper hand in this rivalry game for so many years against Arkansas and think that it's an automatic that Missouri's defense is going to come out and crush. Again, I think Missouri will have to score more than 24 points to win this game.
Arkansas is scoring on everybody. Everybody.
Yes, it does not matter who. I think Missouri is capable of doing that, but they will have to protect the football. Bo Pribula, a couple of turnovers again this past week. We've seen some ball security issues for Missouri. They're underwater in their turnover margin on the course of this season. They will have to be careful with it because if they give short fields to Arkansas, it will turn into points, and it just makes the task that much more difficult. But with that being said, use your explosive plays, use your playmakers, use Hardy and Roberts. Again, for two running backs that don't like to go down, this Arkansas team does not like to tackle very well. Watch them and see. You have to exploit those advantages to win this game.
Yeah, Mizzou's had a couple of fumbles on the ground this year, but for the most part, you're a lot better off in terms of ball security if you do put it in the capable hands of Hardy and Roberts. And speaking of Hardy, congratulations on being named a Doak Walker Award finalist. That's something that's starting to happen quite a bit for Mizzou the last handful of years, but it's still a really big deal to be considered basically one of the three best running backs in the nation. So he's up there, and Kewan Lacey, the former Tiger at Ole Miss, is a finalist, and then a St. Louis native, Jeremiah Love, for Notre Dame. Those are your three finalists. But congratulations to Hardy. He's up there and well-deserved.
Well, if not for a decision by Mr. Lacey, you would argue very strongly that two of the top three running backs in the country were maybe kind of sort of at one point in Missouri's running back room within the past year, which leads to another thing. Very well-deserved for Coach Curtis Looper, Missouri's running backs coach, to be Missouri's representative on the Broyles Award list, and that award is given to the top assistant coach in the country. I would argue that Curtis Looper should make the semifinal and the finalist list, or however they winnow that down for the Broyles Award, because 3 on the Doak Walker finalist list in 5 seasons is absurd. Yeah. It's ridiculously good. And what he has done to attract this talent, bring it in, and coach it to be amongst the best in the Southeastern Conference. And again, one of those in these past 5 years was once upon a time a walk-on, earned his scholarship, and then led Division I in rushing and won the Burlsworth Trophy in Cody Schrader. I mean, coming out of nowhere, right? And Ahmad Hardy, a little bit less out of nowhere, but still really good. And Jamal Roberts' development. I think he should win the award. I know he won't because they want to look at teams that win so much and yada, yada. I would hope that they look past that and look at the body of work for Curtis Looper, because that dude has any penny of salary Curtis Looper has gotten, you could double it, and he'd be worth it. I mean, that's how good he's been.
Well, and you think about, we've had chances in some of the games that have gotten out of hand in Mizzou's favor to see, Marquise Davis, Brendan Haygood. I mean, even those guys are looking pretty sharp, and the future is bright in the running back room for Mizzou, on top of the fact that obviously Hardy and Roberts both have eligibility left. So you really have the opportunity to have a very, very deep running back room. Tavares Jones has been a more of a special teams contributor, but he's still been out there too. So yeah, it's an excellent group, and Curtis Looper has done a great job here.
The Missouri women stood at the line at the NCAA cross-country championships on their home course at Gans Creek, and made a little bit of history, or at least an individual made a little bit of history, which is something that is promising to see, especially when it comes from someone in their first year.
Monica Wanjiku, All-American recognition. She finished 35th individually at the Gans Creek course in the national championships this past Saturday. She's just the second Mizzou woman to be an All-American as a freshman. So really encouraging there. She's not the only freshman or sophomore that was, on the line for Mizzou in that event too. So it's a young team that, hopefully as they get more reps, they'll continue to grow and move their way up. They finished 28th in the nation as a team at the event this past weekend, and hopefully they'll have better things to come in future nationals.
Yes, absolutely. Mizzou wrestling on Monday night entertained the Fighting Illini of Illinois. Again, it was back-to-back matchups. Missouri had its national ranking rise to number 11. Illinois had its rise to number 9. It's good when you wrestle good teams, and you get that credit. But the Illini, after a 26-18 dual defeat in Tulsa, took a 21-16 away from Missouri. So tighter matches on Monday against Illinois. Unfortunately for Missouri, the same result against a Big Ten program that really has grown in its strength over the past 5 seasons or so. And so Missouri will now have the Journeyman Wrestling event in St. Charles, where it's Long Island University, Nebraska, coming up on Friday, December the 5th. And then on the 7th, they'll stay out there and they'll be in the Cougar Clash at Edwardsville for those competing.
That Illini duel, it got off to a great start for Mizzou. You had a redshirt freshman in Mac Mauger get a top 25 win at 125 pounds. Kind of a mini upset there. And then Cade Moore goes up against the defending national champ at 133, led 7-0, but wound up losing 12-9. And then, we've talked about with Brian Smith on last week's pod about, Cam Steed still being out. And so you end up starting true freshmen at both 165 and 174, and then you lose the duel by 5. So it's easy to think, what if, could have happened there. But, they're clearly in it against some of the, top 10 wrestling programs in the country. They're in the fight, and curious to see what it looks like in St. Charles, especially that duel against a Nebraska program that I believe at one point was number 2 in the nation. They've dropped a little bit, but still, the Big Ten, their success in wrestling speaks for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So we wish them all the best as they get into their competition. Mizzou volleyball was at the SEC Championships in Savannah. A 5-setter, I think that maybe the team could go back and say, man, how many 5-setters did we drop in that 5th set this season? And one was to Ole Miss, and that's an upset loss. And unfortunately, for the volleyball team, that puts them on the wrong side of the bubble for the NCAA tournament. I think still a season for Don Sullivan where everything has now been established, right? You've competed in the Southeastern Conference. You put yourself in a bye in this new conference tournament, finishing 6th in the seeding. Now can you take that and take this as a base and maybe make this into what you'd call a quote-unquote down year and build from here to be a top 4 program in a very talented and growing league and put yourself every year in that position you want to be in. And they were in position this year to put themselves in the NCAA tournament. Just at the finish, it faltered for them.
Yeah, it seems like that's what's going to be the case. Charlie Cream apparently doesn't just do women's basketball bracketology. He does volleyball tournament bracketology. I learned that this week in part of my research for this podcast. So there you go. There's a fun fact for you. But yeah, that loss against Ole Miss, the 14 seed, Mizzou, the 6 seed, felt like Mizzou needed to have a good week to get into the conversation for a tournament spot, and you lose right away to one of the worst teams in the conference. So it appears, according to the Charlie Creams of the world, that Mizzou is on the wrong side of the bubble heading into that tournament's selection Sunday in a couple of days. But overall, a lot of positives on the year. 17-11 overall, had a winning record in the league at 8-7. We'll hope that the Charlie Cream types are wrong and Mizzou can sneak in there to the big dance, but that might be the end of the road.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult ask because I don't think the SEC in volleyball is at the point yet where you say winning record in this league automatically gets you in. There's still a lot of depth at other places in the country, whereas if you are on a diamond or if you were on the football field, even to some degree, you have a winning record in the league and you start to think, okay, that is a significant accomplishment. I think it is still significant for Don Sullivan and company. It just isn't nationally at the point yet where you can say, over a course of so many games, if you have a winning record in this league, you're in like Flint. In men's basketball, it's that way. In women's hoops, it's that way. It's not yet that way in volleyball. We'll see. Maybe it is that way this year. But again, things trend towards the other side, and we'll keep our fingers and toes crossed, and maybe we'll come away with some good news to tell you about on next time's podcast. I was going to say next week's, but who knows? It's the holidays, and we're traveling, and could be in a bunch of different places.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll be back in your ears at some point. I did want to mention Swim and Dive. They hosted the Mizzou Invite since our last podcast. That was late last week, and won it on both the men's and the women's side, and it was a really good meet for Luke Niebrick. He broke a couple school records as an individual in the 50 free and then as part of the men's 200 free relay team. So congratulations to Niebrick. Matthew Mortensen also set a school best in the 400 individual medley. So good stuff from both of them and good stuff from the entire teams, I guess, on both the men's and women's side.
Yeah, I'd guess so. And I think that kind of continues unabated, trying to peak throughout the course of this winter. And then you get into SECs, and as we've said for many years, and as we've heard from Coach Grievers for many years, it might be more difficult to win a Southeastern Conference than it is to win at the NCAAs, just because of how stacked the league is. So they'll do their best to work their way up to that. And we will do our best to see if there's anything else to talk about, but I don't think that there is today. Again, I apologize for the lack of recipes. I will say, well, if there is a recipe and you make your cranberry sauce, there has to be like orange and lemon maybe even a little lime. There has to be citrus in your cranberry sauce to
Okay.
make it even more tart if you're making it with the cranberries. That is a secret. Plenty of sugar. The cranberries, you cook them down. But if you do not have this citrus zest, it will fall flat.
Plenty of sugar. You shouldn't be talking about that if you have trouble.
No,
with
I said
sugar
said
intake,
salt
blah, blah,
because
blah.
there are people with sodium restricted diets, and I suppose if you are a diabetic, you are managing your blood sugar very well.
It's Thanksgiving.
This is not the inside health advice podcast.
It's Thanksgiving, bro. You gotta YOLO, man. You gotta let this rip. You gotta let it go.
Sounds like Brad Trinaga will be letting some things rip over the course of this weekend. Will not comment further. Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast. Steve Sowers, our producer, can hardly contain himself because he's thinking of all the calls he's going to get after people listen to this Thanksgiving week edition. Thank you, and very thankful for you, Steve, and all your hard work. And thank you as well, Brad, for being here every single week. Sometimes I'm only here in spirit. You always bring the goods, so appreciate you, my friend.
It's been a gas. Appreciate you.
Okay, very good. For Brad Trinago, I'm Matt Michaels. Dang it, he got me. We'll talk to you next time. Happy Thanksgiving on the inside.